Smith, Mr. Weezer, myself, Bernard Parks as chair. Let me just go through what we're going to do on the agenda. We have 3 items in closed session, which we'll deal with first, and then we will come back and deal with items 4 through 13. And I'd ask that we hold number 7 last because it would be the most discussion. And but we'll go in closed session at this time. And also, colleagues, if we can have number 8 on consent, we can move that so people aren't. And number 8 deals with the building and safety refund.
Yes, second, whatever.
Mr. Rosenthal, myself, Bernard Parks. We're going to start off with item 4 and then go through the agenda, holding number 7 for last.
Okay, item 4 is a CAO report relative to the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for 2009-10 from the GFOA. Just as a note, the city has received the award for 13 years in a row, and it is basically an award that we apply for each year, and we do receive based on our budget documentation. We do receive a nice plaque.
Is it a presentation of the budget, or?
It is a presentation of the budget, not the actual reflection of whether it's balanced or not.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to clarify. Let me say congratulations, CAO, because I understand we're the largest city in the United States that gets such an award, and for the 13th consecutive year, it's a whole lot of hard work to get our budget completed. I just want to say it's certainly on behalf of the Budget Finance Committee, we appreciate your good work and commend you for this award. Anybody else have any?
Well, thank you. Certainly with all of your insight and guidance helped us as well. So.
Okay.
All right.
Next item.
You ready for item 5? Item 5 is the joint CAO Office of Finance report and communication from the Chair of Jobs and Business Development Committee relative to tax classifications for businesses utilizing the Internet as a primary means to provide services. We also have a city attorney report and draft ordinance attached to the file as well.
Okay. Let me ask, we have several cards on this item. We ask the cards, people will come up at this time, and then we'll get the staff up. Nicole Shahinian, Gary Tobin, Ali, I'm sorry, take that back, Brad Kemp, just come up and get a seat there, and then Ali Valadis.
Thank you.
We'll start over here. Also, for anyone in the audience, if you want to make a comment on any of the items on the agenda, please make out a card and get it to the clerk.
Chairman Parks and members of the committee, my name is Gary Tobin. I'm President and CEO of the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce. And I believe that this action is your first step towards a real strategy for economic development and creating additional revenue for the city of Los Angeles at the same time. In economic development, you play to your strengths. You look for your assets. We have a significant asset here in Los Angeles and Southern California in those creative people who build Internet companies. We have a choice here whether to play that hand and take advantage of it or whether to give it to someone else. And I suggest that there's only one real option here, and that's to create this Internet tax category and use it as the first step in a strategy to keep the most creative and fast-growing companies in Los Angeles.
Thank you.
Nicole Shahanian, Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. We'd like to echo the comments that the LA Chamber just made. As you know, the city's business tax classifications have not evolved to reflect the growth and change of the business models for the 21st century. The Hollywood Chamber believes that this ordinance is long overdue and will restore the original intent of the multimedia business classification, which was established to attract and grow new and dynamic businesses such as internet-based companies. Above and beyond the need to update the city's archaic tax classification system, adoption of this ordinance will ultimately make LA a more competitive place for companies in the growing Internet-based business field. With neighboring cities offering attractive incentives to Internet businesses that are willing to relocate outside of LA, Hollywood itself stands to lose one of its fastest-growing employers, LegalZoom.com, if swift action is not taken towards adopting this new tax classification. Hollywood is not alone, as Internet companies throughout the city weigh their financial impacts of remaining within LA's more expensive tax structure. Failure to pass the proposed Internet tax ordinance will result in long-term loss of revenue and jobs for the city. Given the already dire economic situation the city is facing, it's imperative that the City Council do all it can to attract and retain jobs in LA. We urge you to adopt this ordinance today. Thank you.
Thank you. Could we have those two seats and we'll bring two more people up? Michelle, is it Gassakanian and Blythe Holden? Come up to these two seats and we can start with you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, council members, for having us. My name is Ali Vadat. I'm a principal with the firm Ernst & Young in the state and local tax group. And as many of the companies who will come up will probably go into details about the importance of this ordinance, I just wanted to share my perspective from a practitioner's perspective in state and local tax for the past 11 years. One, I think the city should recognize that a number of companies do make location-based decisions based on their tax liabilities or possible tax liabilities for moving within the city. And the one item to note here is that there are a number of other jurisdictions that border LA where companies may or may not decide to locate. For example, I just recently dealt with a company that wanted to move its headquarters from Ventura County into LA County. Their decision was to move to the city of Agoura. And one of the main reasons, or one of the reasons that they moved to the city of Agoura is there is no business license tax in that city. So the question, one is, location-based decisions are made based on potential tax liabilities of companies, and this ordinance will help the city become more competitive and in line with other jurisdictions. Two, I just also wanted to note that this ordinance is intended to bring companies into the city, startups, and also more veteran companies or companies that have had a number of years of experience. To note here that the gross receipts tax is very similar to a sales tax and that it is a regressive type of tax. So when you are a startup company and you're looking at where you are going to locate, your potential gross receipts liability tax as opposed to an income-based tax is going to be vastly different. And therefore, to the extent the city can encourage those businesses to locate when they are starting up or looking to expand, will encourage more businesses to locate within the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brad Kemp, Beacon Economics. Thank you for having me here today. I want to commend the Department of Finance and the CAO's office for resubmitting a new budget in terms of what the impact is. And I'd invite the members to keep in mind that the loss of revenues, that is significant in terms of the over $3 million. The loss of revenues, if you lose just 4 of the companies identified in that, could be significant enough to outweigh that $3.4 million. And I'd also imply that this industry, although many of us in this room may not necessarily do our interactions online with businesses that don't have a human interface, we have a whole generation of young people who do, and it's an emerging industries. And where I might imply in the past you've given tax credits to businesses expecting a return on your investment that maybe you didn't see because maybe you were trying to help an industry that was failing, this industry is not. It is doing very well, it will be growing, and it will become more and more the standard of how business is done. And to incentivize those type of businesses in Los Angeles County is critical within the city, even more so given that in many ways your costs are higher. So I implore you today to please pass this.
Okay, thank you very much. We have those 2 seats, and ask Stacy Olive and Fred Kripia to come up. Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Garakian. I'm with the Los Angeles Business Council. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I want to echo the comments of my colleagues at the Chamber and also the 2 gentlemen that preceded me. The LA Business Council strongly supports the Internet Tax Ordinance to keep America's fastest growing businesses here in Los Angeles. The business community, I can probably speak for all of us, fears that the city will endure many more job and long-term revenue losses if they do move. Given how easy internet companies can just relocate across city borders, I think it's very, very important for us to consider reclassifying this today. So, to that end, we support the ordinance.
Thank you. Mike.
Good afternoon. I'm Blythe Holden on behalf of Shopzilla. We are an internet company located in West LA in CD11. And I'm here today because we were audited and reclassified out of multimedia. Multimedia, although today we're talking about adding some more language to it to clarify it, this section has been around for a decade now, and it is actually the only section that even refers to the internet to provide any kind of tax classification for internet-related companies. So while we've been classified there for 10 years, we had our tax class change to business and professions. The reason that this is a big deal is that's a 500% increase in our taxes. When it's on the gross, we've been paying in multimedia on average $250,000 a year, and would like to stay in LA and continue in our multimedia rate. $1 million or plus a year in taxes, it's a material difference. It's a difference that makes a company consider whether they want to renew their lease, whether they want to look at expanding another office. We have locations, for example, in San Diego and London. And with our current, in the current situation, we really need to have this ordinance passed in order to, renew our commitment to stay. And on top of that, I'd like to say that while it's true, we're truly a mobile company because we have no storefront. 100% of our business is on the internet. We develop websites for comparison shopping. We have about 6. The most popular ones are BizRate and Shopzilla. 25 million people a month come to our websites. And our search technology, because it is a technology company really, it's pretty phenomenal. Just to give you an example, we perform over 8,000 searches on our website per second. The internet is really where I think, technology is going and businesses will be growing. There'll be companies more interesting than ours in the days to come, I've got no doubt. And I really think we need to support this industry by passing this ordinance. Thank you.
Very much. Can we have your 2 seats and ask David Toomey and Elin Shore? Come on.
Good afternoon. My name is Fred Krupika, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer for LegalZoom. We're in Hollywood. We're a growing company. We've had substantial growth over the last couple of years. We are approaching now 400 employees. Our density in our current offices is about 7 per 1,000 square feet. So it's a very, very dense situation for us, and you can tell what the economic impact is of that. We're here today to ask for your vote and changing to a multimedia or reevaluating the internet assessment in terms of what the LA business tax would be. We too, as Shopzilla, are very mobile. We have no obligation to any physical location. We certainly would move if we don't get some recognition here as to what the impact is on us. It's a very significant impact. It's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. We've been challenged over the last 3 years. I was involved with the 2005, 6, and 7 audit, where they actually reclassified us from one occupation tax to another occupation tax, and we challenged it. We wound up finally settling with the city on it successfully. But we really think that this internet approach really needs to be sound. We have some very real alternatives with a lot of different cities. And so we totally are asking for support of this move on the internet tax.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Stacy Olaf. I'm a Senior Vice President for Legal and Business Affairs with Fandango, the movie ticket company. And like Shopzilla and LegalZoom, we are purely online. We don't own the theaters or actually present any movies. All we do is sell tickets to people nationwide. Happy to be in Council District 11, both living there and working there. And very happy with the representation we get, right?
Thank you, Bill.
Our office is also at the corner of Olympic and Bundy, and we have over 100 employees. We're growing. We're adding dozens of employees every year. We've started 2 sister companies that are involved in also pure online businesses, one related to advertising, the other one shopping. And we'd like to continue to grow in the city in our current location. That's convenient for a lot of our employees, et cetera, but we are 2 blocks from Santa Monica and a mile from Culver City. And when we look at our occupancy costs, this is not an insignificant factor. We do feel like the multimedia rate, extending that same approach to other internet companies, if the existing rate is wording of the rate is not broad enough to pick them up, is a helpful thing to make sure that as we look at growing and adding new businesses, that we'll stay in the city of Los Angeles and feel comfortable that that's a good economic decision for us. And look forward to seeing all of you at the movies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Elon Shore. I'm here representing the LA EDC's Business Assistance Program. I'm the regional manager for the San Fernando Valley, and so I cover the valley portion of the city of LA. I'm also here representing the Valley Economic Alliance, where I serve as their director of business assistance. And I'd like to echo the comments made by the business owners. When we are out, and my role is simple: to attract, retain, and grow jobs by helping companies come here, helping them to make these kinds of location decisions. And when we speak to companies about Los Angeles, the business license tax is usually their primary concern, the primary thing they want information on. So we are supportive of, ongoing efforts by the city to make the city's business tax more competitive so that we can attract new businesses here, keep the businesses we have here, and grow these kinds of jobs that help our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is David Toomey. I'm a partner with Cressa Partners. We're the largest real estate service firm in North America that specializes in assisting companies relocating their operations. Our largest practice area here in Los Angeles is working with digital media companies. Our job is to help companies evaluate their real estate needs and identify properties that best meet their criteria. And obviously one of the key drivers for a real estate decision is cost. And we have found that the business tax cost is making remaining in or moving into the city of Los Angeles prohibitive. Each year we relocate, or we work with companies who are considering relocating their operations here in Los Angeles, companies that employ a combined 7,500 to 10,000 employees. So it's significant. Given the number of choices that companies have, if they're in the city of Los Angeles between Santa Monica, Culver City, Beverly Hills, El Segundo, et cetera, it's a pretty easy move for them to make. So you don't have the issues that would prevent them from moving. We're currently working on 10 relocation requirements right now that employ 2,500 employees, including Shopzilla, Fandango, Rent.com, Business.com, Activision, to name a few. I live in L.A. My kids go to school in L.A. Our office is in the city of Los Angeles. I'm a huge supporter, and we have a vested interest. So we hope that you'll rule in favor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We can have your seats. Sarah from CD 13. Before we bring the staff. I didn't see you over there. Okay.
Hi, I'm Sarah Dussault, and I'm Director of Policy for Council President Eric Garcetti, and I'm here on his behalf. I just want to thank the committee and the chair in advance for agendizing this item so quickly, and just wanted to make a few remarks on his behalf. We're facing a financial crisis of the magnitude not felt since the Great Depression. And while some sectors of the economy have begun to recover, the most damaging statistic for Los Angeles is that this has been a jobless recovery. Here in LA, we have unemployment rates well above the national average and are currently at 13.2% in the city and 12.4% in the county, with our nation at 9.6%. If we include the underemployed and those who have given up the search, those numbers become drastically larger. This is why the council and the mayor reconvened the Business Tax Advisory Committee, and they are diligently working on ideas to stimulate job growth. It is also why the council president has asked them to immediately consider ways to implement a tax credit for job creation in the city. But before all of these measures, the immediate problem of internet-based companies looking to relocate from Los Angeles became clear last year. These business models are based on low profit margins and sales through the internet, but many businesses were being classified as professional services, the highest tax category in LA. On April 15th, the council president introduced a motion instructing the Office of Finance to report on a business tax classification that recognizes the use of a computer and the internet as a primary means to provide services. So before you today is a new tax category that would develop a new media category. This ordinance also includes a sunset clause so that if for some reason it does not have the effect that everyone is hoping for to create and retain jobs, we will be able to eliminate it. The experience of working to implement this new category has proven to the council president, and I know others share this view, the great need for more substantial economic analysis of the policies before the city council. That's why we're working to implement the economic analysis for measures such as this, because we need to know the impact of new ordinances on job creation and retention. That report will be coming before this committee soon, and while we do not have all the data we would like before us today, we do know from many companies who are here today and from the work of Beacon Economics the Office of Finance, and the CAO that these companies are paying good salaries to people who live and work in Los Angeles, and these jobs have a strong multiplier effect. The Council President strongly believes it is our responsibility to keep these jobs in Los Angeles, as well as to encourage more businesses to begin and grow here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have city staff with the Department of Finance, the CAO, and the city attorney come up? Antoinette, could you start off by giving us an overview of the ordinance, the impact on your operation, how many businesses it will impact, what is the impact on our revenue?
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Parks. Just by way of background, as was indicated, our
For the record.
Antoinette Cristobal, Office of Finance, General Manager. By way of background, our office was requested to do an analysis on the revenue impact if the city were to create an internet-based classification. And in working with a group of members representing members from council, CAO's office, CLA's office, the city attorney's office, we came forth with a proposed ordinance that we don't have the city attorney representative here, and I hope that they will arrive if you're listening. But based on the draft ordinance, our office was asked to conduct the revenue analysis. And as was indicated, our analysis was very limited from the standpoint that we only have limited information in our LA tax system relative to business tax, so we couldn't identify the other economic impacts if the city were to move forward with the proposed internet classification that is in the city attorney's ordinance. But through that analysis, we identified about 1,400 businesses that would potentially qualify should this particular ordinance goes forward. Most of them are in the professions and occupations category, and the revenue impact associated with that would be about $3.4 million, and that's just the business tax piece. That doesn't speak to any offsets, other economic offsets. As was indicated previously, these businesses are mobile. They can uproot and leave the city. They don't necessarily have to remain here to conduct their business. They can conduct their business from any place, whether it's in the U.S. or another country, and they have identified that the jobs are high-paying jobs. So we do believe that through this this ordinance that it will allow for these businesses to hopefully stay in LA. And in full disclosure, not every business that came forward today would actually qualify.
Say that last sentence.
Not every business that came forward would actually qualify under the ordinance.
Also, could you tell us what the impact, because you're in the middle,
I'm sorry?
Start of your election of taxes for this year. How would this ordinance impact you making it operational this year?
Actually, we're prepared to move forward. Today is the last day for business tax renewals. They're due by midnight tonight if you mail them in, for everyone that's listening. So businesses, let's say that they submit their renewal under professions and occupations as of today, and the council and the mayor approves this particular ordinance. Subsequently, we would be prepared to address that, working individually with businesses that would qualify, where we would provide, a mechanism so that they could have a refund or an offset for future years should they decide to go that process. So we are prepared to address that should your committee and council move forward. And as I've indicated, we think this is the right thing to do.
Do we have someone from this city attorney's office? Let me ask the CAO, on your report that's dated on February the 26th, is that in response to the job committee's December committee report asking for certain things to be done?
That's correct.
Jose?
How much do we estimate that can be realized, or do we forecast in new revenue how far have we forecasted this?
We've only addressed the revenue loss impact associated with this. It's about $3.4 million, but if these businesses decide to leave, let's say if 50% of them decide to leave the city of Los Angeles, the estimate in terms of the revenue loss to the city could be as high as $6.8 million, because it not only includes the revenue that they derive from the internet, some of these businesses also derive revenue from other resources, and so if they up and leave the city, they're going to take all of the revenue that they currently pay here in the city of LA.
So the cost-benefit analysis that we're doing is we lose out in $3.4 million in revenue, but we gain, the alternative is we could lose
$6.8 million.
Dollars if 50% of these that classify under this category leave.
Right, and as I've indicated, these businesses are highly mobile in terms of their operation.
And I know it's difficult to forecast because what indicators would you use, or how would you forecast this? But we didn't do any estimates as to how much we can realize in the long term.
Well, I think long-term, maintaining the businesses here in the city of LA, and I know that the mayor's economic development group did do some analysis and have spoken to some of the businesses, and they've indicated that they're looking to expand their operations. So as a result of expansion, I would anticipate there could be an increase in revenue, not only from business tax, but from other revenue sources that the city.
So on your benefit column, it was mostly maintenance of existing businesses. It didn't include any attracting any new businesses to the area, correct? You didn't calculate that in...
That's really difficult to say, but to determine. But we do know that because these businesses are in the highest tax category right now, it is, and the fact that they're highly mobile, it is likely, and they can run their operation in any area. It's likely that businesses will not come forward and. Well, they would not consider coming into the city of LA because they would be placed in a higher tax category. With them now being, once this is approved, in the lower tax category, I think the likelihood of attracting and retaining businesses would be certainly greater. And part of the report, Beacon Economics did their own competitive analysis, and they talked about how the city is quite costly in terms of the overall operating expenses, including business tax. So if we could provide relief with the business tax, I think it's likely that we would be able to attract additional internet-based businesses here in LA.
Now, the Beacon report, that focused on surrounding cities on the cost of doing business. It didn't, or did it only focus on this one category and how we compare to other cities on these types of businesses?
Actually, in the detailed report it did, and I don't have it in front of me, but I think what it showed, for the most part, LA is probably the highest relative to business taxes. I think the city of Santa Monica is somewhat high, but overall, relative to business taxes, the rate that internet-based businesses pay here in the city as a business tax is considerably higher than other neighboring cities.
Great. Thank you.
First, I want to thank Shopzilla for bringing it to our attention about a year and a half or 2 years ago and staying strong on it. I want to thank CD13 and Eric's leadership as well. But we've been all over this issue in our district, because the last thing I want to do is lose business, and especially businesses that are up and coming and have a multiplier effect for the economy. Are all those folks who spoke, are they going to be covered under this new ordinance?
No.
Who won't be?
I don't know if I could disclose that.
Okay, but why wouldn't they be?
You want to talk about it?
Well, yes. Basically, the two internet business classifications that,
State your name.
I'm sorry, Ed Cabrera, Chief of Tax Permit Division, Office of Finance. The two business classifications that have been identified in the city attorney draft report are very specific as far as the type of activities in which eligible businesses can participate in. One of the activities is data manipulation. That essentially would be an example, for example, would be a business that develops develops search engines and provides that type of service solely over the internet without any substantial intermediation from any employees other than for technical support for using the website. The second definition involves businesses that provide applications for the use of their clients or customers, again, over the website so that they can provide and achieve a particular task. Some of the businesses that have spoken today are engaged in other activities that fall outside of the two business definitions that are described. So based on the knowledge that we have, it's our determination that not every business that has come forward would qualify.
Okay, you said 1,400 businesses are within this category?
Yes, that's our estimate, correct.
Are these the ones that will be brought in under the new ordinance, or a good number of those won't be?
No, those would be businesses that we're projecting would potentially qualify.
And those that didn't qualify or you feel wouldn't fit in, have they been notified of that?
No, we haven't. I mean, there are certain businesses that, in our discussions with the various participants, we have advised, based on our knowledge of their operations, that they wouldn't qualify. Those have been the various council offices that we've had discussions with.
Could you tell us what the process is for them now that the tax season has started? What's the process for businesses to become aware of this? Is it self-reporting? Do you contact them? How does that work?
We can do a number of things. Certainly, it would make it available on our website that these two new tax classifications are available. We're hoping to also get some media, free media, hopefully, through this process as well. Hopefully, there will be press releases that can bring the information out to the general public, and just provide information to the various business groups as well as the CPA society that handles business tax-related businesses here in LA, and the various attorneys that represent a number of the businesses on tax matters. So we intend to get the message out that way. We don't have money necessarily for public outreach, so we're going to utilize, the resources that we have within our operation.
Let me just be clear, is Shopzilla or Fandango covered in this new ordinance? Can't tell me. Okay, but I just hope that those particular groups have been in compliance with how we go forward with this new ordinance. Those that might not fit in this category, what kind of a revenue stream are we talking about from them? We can't talk about that.
We can't talk about them,
okay.
but
I don't know. I don't want to play cloak and dagger, but I do just want to make a general statement and say that the groups in my district, we work very hard on this so that the process would be open and transparent, and it's important to me that we don't lose businesses to any other city. And as you all know, Santa Monica is in the heart of my district. Culver City comes through my district, as does Marina Del Rey. So we certainly appreciate keeping businesses in our district. And since I can't be cryptic, it sounds kind of crazy here, but we'll just stay with that level. And thank you. Let me ask City Attorneys here, do you have any, a couple of things I wanted to ask. In the report that we received from the CAO, they commented of a potential 218 issue. What is that?
I'm not sure. I just arrived. The only 218 issue that we're aware of is if the incentive is put in place and problems that then develop, there's a 218 issue in removing the incentives. That's why we put a sunset clause into the draft that we provided to council.
Okay, so the removal is the 218, but if you put a sunset, you avoid that?
Well, we're hopeful that it will. Sunset clauses have never been tested specifically in California courts. Our reading of Proposition 218 is that they should be allowed. The cases that we have say that under Proposition 218 you can restore a tax to the prior approved rate, and a sunset clause would simply do that. However, we can't guarantee that it would be allowed to restore the rate without board approval. But that's our current reading of the law, and we believe it should be allowed.
Okay. And let me ask Lorraine, does this have a placeholder for this week?
Yes, Friday.
This is on Friday. One thing, there's, I believe the ordinance that's been put together has a starting date of January 2011?
Yes,
through 2015?
It does.
Okay. What would be the process we'd have to go through to move it to January 2010 through 2014?
That could just be an interlineation by council through motion.
Okay, could that be done on the floor on Friday? Or does that have to be done in writing before Friday?
I believe it could be done on the floor. I can draft an amendment and provide it before Friday, though.
The thing is, I think the wish is to have it effective January 2010.
Yes, Pete Echeverria from the City Attorney's Office. We have yet to provide the final. We provided a draft ordinance, so the final, if you so instruct us, can include that modification.
Do we make that modification
We can provide
on
that
the
to
date?
the clerk with that modification.
It goes January 2010 through 2014. Instead of the current ordinance, it's 2011 through 2015.
I'll make those changes and provide it to council.
All right, and so the issue today will be moving the ordinance. Let me ask the CAO on the issue of revenue. Have you looked at that and the impact on our business tax and things of that nature?
Rex Olive with the CAO. We did look at it. It will reduce city revenue this year by $3.4 million.
And this
fiscal year, and there's really no way to avoid that. In the long run, this ordinance will make the city more business-friendly. It's a first step in this second wave of business tax reform. There's really no reason, other than the $3.4 million, not to proceed ahead with it, because within a year or two, we would lose most of these businesses anyway. So it'd be very short-sighted not to move ahead.
Colleagues, do you have any questions?
Yeah, so $3.4 million for this year, but the ordinance takes effect when?
If the ordinance takes effect retroactively to January 1st this year.
So it takes, and that's what's in the ordinance right now, retroactive?
That's what we're moving toward.
The original ordinance had 2011.
Yeah.
And so that meant they'd have to go through this tax season and next tax season. So we're trying to make it effective January of 2010. Any other questions? Okay. So let's move the ordinance with those amendments. We have a placeholder for Friday, council, and I think that covers everything. Thank you very much.
Okay, item number 6 is a Board of Water and Power Commissioners report and resolution, and City Attorney report and draft ordinance relative to the transfer of surplus money from the Power Revenue Fund of the Department of Water and Power to the Reserve Fund during fiscal year 2009-10.
Okay, we have city staff come up. First of all, we want to thank you for this stipend. Questions we have is that it appears that this is not the entire 8%. Could you give us an idea of why it's being basically done in increments, and when could the city expect the second increment, and how much?
Okay. We do plan to transfer the entire 8%, which will be an additional $73.5 million. That should occur within the next 2 months. Why that's happening, we have a number of factors that are impacting the power system. First is our electrical consumption is down about 4% compared to last year. The recession has hit all of our customers, and we're actually running about 1% below that. We have the first year of our restructured electrical rates. If you recall, in July of 2009 began the restructured rates. What that does is places more revenue hitting us during the on-peak months, during the summer months, and less during the off-peak months. And we have rapidly escalating power costs that we're analyzing now. But our assumption, and we believe we'll be able to transfer that additional $73 million within the next 2 months.
Okay, so the issue of the usage is down, our structured rates have not come into play, and then we have the power costs.
Right.
Are the three reasons. And you think that in a couple of months, somewhere in the neighborhood of 73 million?
Right, and it all ties into the cash level. We have a metric of $300 million minimum cash level.
Yeah, something called cash flow.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions?
We don't have.
Okay, we'll move that item with those additional information. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Fred, it takes us to item number 9, which is Office of Finance report, transmitting a report from Macias Consulting Group relative to an assessment of the feasibility of centralizing billing and collections on a citywide basis.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeffrey Whitmore from the Office of Finance.
Yeah, let me just say that the intent of scheduling this is to get a verbal update and have it rescheduled as to when we could get some assessment of the recommendations from the report. Thank you. So it's basically it's an update verbally.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Parks. I do have along with me Stephen Anderson from Macias Consulting. As you know, there have been a number of previous studies regarding the centralization of accounts receivable within the City of Los Angeles, and as a result of an audit with the Controller's Office in 2007, one of the recommendations was that we move forward with the centralization of accounts receivable. As a result, we did convene a steering committee composed of the Office of the Mayor, CLA, CAO, Department of Transportation, and the Office of Finance. Forgive me if I'm excluding someone. But one of the things we did in choosing Macias Consulting because of their experience was have them to look at the reality or the possibility of centralization, and if determined to be feasible, develop an implementation plan. So the report that has been transmitted reflects their findings. They do find that there is benefit in centralization to the city, and their process is a 3-phased process of implementation. Phase 1 has, in fact, council already acted upon that for the implementation thereof, but the PowerPoint presentation that you have is an outline of the report, of their findings. And of course, I know you've just receiving that and would take a moment to review that. But Mr. Anderson has made himself available if you have any specific questions or concerns as to the methodology or the findings.
Thank you very much for being here. Could you just give us an overview of what your report's recommendations, also timelines, cost projections, so that we can understand better the phasing that you've recommended?
Okay. Again, Stephen Anderson from Macias Consulting. Our recommendation does take 3 different phases. The first phase being improving the overall measurement of the accounts receivable across departments. Basically, we get what we measure, and that's where the first foundation of improvement lies, in increasing both the reporting and the effectiveness of accounts receivable measurement across departments. So we have an improvement from the current quarterly dashboard, which is the existing process. Phase 2 would be centralization of what I call the high impact or low hanging fruit accounts receivable. Those departments that have a fairly low collection efficiency and that do not require considerable system integration cost to integrate. And those are the 2 main driving factors. Other driving factors are specialized resource requirements, such as medical privacy, infrastructure, in the case of EMS billings, and complex business processes, where it's very difficult to transition those from a department such as housing to a centralized authority. The first phase is about a $1.4 million phase, roughly, and primarily with respect to the data interfaces and reporting for the different departments and the monitoring of those reports. The second phase is considerably higher due to the different system integration costs. It is about $12 million or so, roughly, with the main drivers being some of the system development costs required to interface some of the proprietary billing systems with the city's new FMS system coming online.
Okay. Let me ask the CAO, on those projections, and they're a little higher than the notes that we received, what's the expectation as far as the source of those funds? Is that general fund? Is that we're looking for it through our revenue from increased business tax, or just what is the source? The source. Because our notes show, instead of 1.4, about 800,000 for Phase 1, about 7.5 million for Phase 2, and the numbers we just received from Macias is that it's 1.4 and 12.
Yes, it's my understanding, Matthias Farfan for the Office of the CAO, that the costs here that are reflected, the revenue increases may include special funds as well, because it would be a centralization of all billing and collections. So you may have like the Building Enterprise Trust Fund, where those fees would be revenues, but they would not be general fund revenues. Now, that is something where we'd have to work with the Office of Finance if we decide to proceed, if council decides to proceed with these phasing in of these changes, is the funding, the source of funds that will pay to implement this. And that's something we would have to work with them to just identify. So the costs would also be burdened by the special funds. It would be sort of, we'd have to determine what the revenue sources are that would be collected from it, and as a result, what the expenditures as far as what the source of funds could pay for that as well.
So you're looking at the centralization of funds as being the platform to maybe fund this operation, is using the actual funds that they're going to be pulling under one umbrella?
That would be part of the analysis in reviewing this. Of course, Finance would need to come forward with a budget request as far as what the actual requirements would be to implement this. I know just in the report, it does mention making current billing and collection systems, tying them into FMS. Right now, I don't believe we've gotten a proposal from anyone to actually build these interfaces, so that would be the whole process in identifying, this is pretty much a plan at this stage, and these are estimates, to my understanding.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And we would still need to work with ITA, the controller, and Finance in order to then put everything together as far as what the proposal is, and then sending it out to get costed out.
Are we looking strictly outside as opposed to ITA performing these tasks?
Well, it all depends on the systems that are required. Of course, it's FMS that would be receiving the data, so that would be one component of the interface, but the exterior systems that are currently belong to the departments as proprietary systems, they would have to then build that other leg of the interface. So it would be a mixture, it all depending on if the current system is maintained by a vendor, then the vendor would be performing the work. If it's a system that was created by ITA or the city that's maintained by the city, then that system then I would think would be, the interface would be created by the city.
Let me ask Ray, we had 3 recommendations that came out of the financial status report, January 29th. Are these 3 recommendations taking us on course as it relates to bringing all this under one umbrella for reporting? Because it appears that the recommendations we have on our staff reports is to come back in 30 days asking the department to give us some insight as to how they're going to implement this. So do these mesh somewhere down the line?
Most certainly, yes. I think they should be meshed. I mean, basically, we're talking about centralization in various areas, and we need to bring forward basically one clear set of recommendations and a strategy. And so both those items are they are connected.
Okay. When we put these 3 instructions in the FSR, did we give timelines?
We didn't have any timelines.
No, there was no timelines. There was an estimated time frame in the report as far as how long it would take. The Phase 1, it was estimated would take up to 18 months. And then the Phase 2 would all be dependent. I mean, that could be phased in, I think, it was over 4 years.
3 to 5 years.
3 to 5 years.
No. Okay. Let me just ask that we hold this in committee. It's been for 30 days, but I'd certainly like to see how we can mesh the direction from the FSR to make sure that we're all working in concert together, and we're going to end up with a comprehensive report versus two different fragmented efforts. So if we can hold it for 30 days and figure out how we tie it to the what we directed in the FSR, and then come back with what approach we're going to go forward on these three phases. Thank you.
All right, item number 10 is a motion, Parks Zakorian, relative instructing the Director of the Office of Finance to immediately submit to the Council its quarterly report on the city's financial performance and annual report on the citywide performance for discussion at the March 1st, 2010 meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee in order to provide the Council with a comprehensive picture of the city's current revenue collection efforts and potential improvements to the system.
Anthony, what I need to find out is what reports do you currently produce? And from the motion, it appeared that there's some mandated by administrative code. And one of the things that we do here for the treasurer, we go through their reports. I'm wondering what reports do you currently produce that should be coming to this committee and gives us insight as to the operations of your department?
Well, there are two reports that quarterly report, which is submitted quarterly, and it takes into account the accounts receivable for all revenue-generating departments exclusive of the proprietary departments, recognizing the aging of the receivables, and the report also identifies whether the departments are referring the delinquent accounts receivables to the city contracted collection agencies in a timely manner in accordance with the citywide billing collections procedures. That's part of the Mayor's Executive Directive number 5. The other is an annual report that we submit annually to the Mayor's office. The charter basically just speaks to my department making recommendations to the Mayor and Council on the efficient organization of departments that have receivables. So I think in that context, these two reports would address that. And today we do have the quarterly report, the most recent quarterly report as of December 31, 2009, and it's based on, as I've said, receivable information that our office receives from the various departments. We load that into, we have, I guess, what do you call it, an access database type system that generates and crunches the numbers based upon the information that's provided by the departments.
Okay. Both of those reports contain recommendations?
The quarterly report, yeah, they do.
They both?
Yeah.
Now, what's the lag time when you say quarterly? Is it within a month of the quarter? Is it 2 months? What's the timeline?
Departments are required to submit their data to the Office of Finance within 8 business days following the end of the quarter. And in our office, we're responsible for releasing that information by the 15th day of that following month. Of course, this particular report is late, and it's primarily because we all needed more time given the impacts of ERIP and some other staffing shortages throughout the city. So this report is a little late, but generally it would be provided around the 15th day of the following month for the quarter end.
15 days, but
the 15th day following the quarter of the month following the end of the quarter.
Now what about the annual? When does that due?
We generally present that report around, I think it's in October. It's for the fiscal year, but we generally don't get it out until like around October of the following fiscal year.
All right. And so, but these are routine reports, not something that you'd be making up strictly for the committee. These are required by the administrative code?
It doesn't necessarily speak to quarterly or annually. It just speaks to our department making recommendations to the Mayor and Council on the efficient operation of accounts receivable, departments that handle accounts receivable. So we submitted quarterly. I think the Mayor's office had specifically asked that we provide routine reports, and so we agreed that it would be a quarterly report mainly to see how the departments are performing, and then annually to show, how well or poor, departments did relative to managing their accounts receivable operations and in terms of recommendations that they could do to improve upon it.
So your next quarterly report would be April?
Yes, April 15th.
And then, so your let's see, the April, and then the annual is October.
Well, the annual report would be through June 30, 2010, but we probably wouldn't get it out until around October. We'll try and release it sooner, but we're losing a lot of staff within our operations as other departments are, with the goal of getting it out as quickly as possible.
Right. Let me ask you, Ray, if we could work something out to where we can begin to get the annual report and the quarterly reports, much as we get the monthly reports from the Treasurer's office, so we could just have a routine scheduling, and if it's 15 days after the quarter, that we can get it within that month on the schedule for the committee, and then October each year for the annual.
Okay.
Please, any questions? Thank you very much, and we'll move on that schedule. You can work with Ray so that we can get a calendar.
Okay, and you have a December 31?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Axel, before we move on, actually, I would like to go back to item number 6. This is on the DGP ordinance. I would ask, I don't know if we have a placeholder, but if we could request a placeholder and try to get this to council as quickly as possible, because it does require a 30-day ordinance.
Thursday.
Thursday, that would be perfect. Because
Is it placeover, what'd you say, Thursday?
The council president's office asked for it for Thursday.
Good, perfect. As we understand it, and talking to the controller, we may, because it's become a little bit late, we may trigger additional borrowing from the reserve fund. So, okay, thank you. Okay, moving to item 11, which is a motion, Cardenas-Weezar, relative to the instruction that all departments be instructed to update their organizational chart upon the adoption of each fiscal year budget, and once again upon approval of the mid-year financial status report and related matters. So, I know there were additional instructions just for the...
I was just going to ask you, what do we require now? Because I thought this was routine.
Right now, we request organizational charts from departments 2 times. One, when the budget is adopted, which is, so we usually request that in June, July, and then the second time is when they submit their proposed budget. So we ask for an organizational chart that shows their existing and then all requested changes to the organization. So twice a year right now.
If they submit a proposed budget when they submit the budget, and these items are not approved, do they then bring you back what the approved budget reflects?
Yes. Once it does get approved, then they are required to revise and update the org chart based on the adopted budget.
Okay, and so is that submitted to the CAO?
It is submitted to the CAO, yes.
Now, is the difference of what they're asking for is the financial source and type of information? Is that currently on the organization?
Right now, we do not have basically source of funds, but the organizational chart is supposed to include all positions, not only regular full-time positions, but also resolution authorities and substitutes.
Okay, do we currently put them on the internet as they're requesting?
No, not right now. I doubt if they're on the internet.
Is that something the departments?
The departments would then have to sort of upload that, put a link to their webpage, and then have that link to go to the organizational chart.
I'd like, if we move this item, but ask that as part of the narrative that you can get with the committee clerk and advise specifically what we're currently doing as far as when reports are forthcoming. It appears that the 2 things that they're asking that are unique is that the funding sources be added to the chart, and that we then ask that the departments upload these final charts on the internet once they're approved. So if we can do that.
So the linking to the web pages, that should be straightforward, assuming
It shouldn't be, but I wouldn't want CAO have to do.
No, we would not. It would not make sense for us to do it. It would be basically for each department to go ahead and do that, assuming they still have system staff remaining at the end of the year. And then I will say funding source by position, though, is pretty difficult for most departments, depending on the changes that occur. So,
I mean, as far as funding source, we're talking about general fund positions?
whether it's general fund or, special fund.
Okay. So we could just say funding sources when available?
when available. What we ultimately would like to get to is when we have a more robust position control, then actually for each, position that's on the org chart, there'll be a little identifier will relate, then correspond to position control, in the department, in PACER.
So if you could give the clerk the current status of what we require, and it appears the two new things would be the source of funding when available, and also departments requested to put approved updated charts on their websites.
Why do we need to put names?
I'm sorry?
Why do we have to identify employees' names?
We normally do not. They're basically the classification. The only one name you'll see at the top is usually the GM, and sometimes you'll see the assistant GMs, but other than that, you usually don't see names.
Let's not have it. Usually just say don't.
Yeah, so we'll scratch that part of the request.
We just, we've been talking for years about zero-based budgeting. This almost goes there in a way by justifying every position. Do we feel comfortable about that? Right. I mean, it bottoms down to putting every job. Do you want to, before you run away, want to answer that one for me? Do you see this as assisting us in getting near the idea that every position obviously needs to be justified, and we talk about zero-based budgeting in the private sector? This brings us pretty close to that.
Yes, Miguel Franco, Office of Councilman Tony Cardenas. The intent of the motion is to get to that position. It's position control, figure out who is in the position, what is their job, what are they providing to the city, what services, and we're looking to figure out, this lays the groundwork to figure out with the 4,000 positions that we're looking to eliminate, who goes where and what services are maintained.
And I thank Tony for putting this on. This is something many of us have been talking about for quite a while.
I think the main issue you're trying to get to is the operational plans as to how the departments will be functioning after the cuts. But again, the organizational charts have been a mandate for a number of years.
They've been an ongoing mandate for several years. I did see the mid-year. I think that's, this year certainly is unique. We've gone through some substantial changes, and so that leads one to believe, well, what does the organization look like? But certainly once we go through the budget process, come up with the adopted budget, all departments will be requested or instructed to update their organization chart based on ERIP, 1,000 positions, et cetera, et
That's
cetera.
after the cuts and layoffs, then the operational plans tell us what the organizational chart's going to be.
That's correct. I guess one just clarification, I think the motion talks about the intranet, not the internet, so.
Okay. So that, but again, that departments can do that. Okay. All right. So we move from there. We'll move that with those instructions.
Okay. Okay, item 12 is a motion, Garcetti Wesson, relative to the Bureau of Contract Administration, with assistance of the city attorney, to report to council relative to providing preferential consideration in bid processes for contractors that have apprenticeship programs.
I just wanted to get clarified what the problematic issues were, because we don't have access to public.
The city attorney is not here. He just stated that there was some concern, so he come to council to talk about this.
Well, we move it, but again, we could, well, like you say, there's no timeline, but they're asking us to concur with Public Works, but we don't know what Public Works did, and we don't know the problematic.
Yeah, the only note I have is they noted and filed, but
Okay, why don't we hold it till Monday, next Monday? Okay, next.
Okay. All right. Item number 13 is a motion, Smith-Reyes, relative to instruction that the planning department prepare a report that delineates its process to collect the newly adopted nuisance abatement fees. I thought I saw Eva in the back there. She can never sneak in. Sure. I believe there were 5 instructions or questions for planning.
Good afternoon, council members. Eva Young McDaniel from the planning department. Thank you, Ray.
So good to see you.
Good seeing you too.
I'll ask the question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, these are the questions here. What process does the planning department use to collect nuisance abatement fees, and what action are taken when noncompliance occurs?
I think I will first ask our revocation section representatives to explain the process, and then if there's any question on the administrative part as how we collect, then I will jump in and work on that.
Alan Bell, Senior City Planner, Department of City Planning, Office of Zoning Administration, and also with me is Lita James, who is the head of our nuisance abatement unit. To answer those questions, I think I need to explain just very briefly what nuisance abatement is and how it works, and what our process is for abating these different types of uses. Basically, the planning department only gets involved when we get a referral from the city attorney's office, and there's been an identified nuisance site, like a liquor store or a motel or a recycling center. These are the typical types of uses that cause nuisances, and the police department action has not worked. At that point, the city attorney's office feels that the only recourse available to the city to abate that particular nuisance is to revoke the certificate of occupancy. And that is really the hammer that the city has to try to enforce compliance and make sure that these uses become good neighbors. The goal of nuisance abatement is not to shut down a business, but to impose conditions that will reform, in a sense, rehabilitate that business to make it a good, viable member of the community providing jobs. So typically, we do not actually revoke the certificate of occupancy. What we try to do is we impose conditions, and then we monitor compliance in terms of those particular conditions. What happened last October, what the planning department did was we did a fee study, and we adopted new fees to recover the city's costs in imposing nuisance abatement. Alita James can talk a little bit about those fees, but they went very, very high. One of the problems that we face in terms of collecting these fees is that there's no incentive, literally, for the applicant, in this case the nuisance site, to pay. It's not like a liquor license where you want something from the city. We are going after nuisance sites, and we are imposing conditions, and we are holding public hearings, and then only after we have incurred the costs of the investigation, city attorney's fees, planning department fees, zoning administrator costs, only when we have incurred all those costs, then we can only impose a condition to pay and reimburse the city for the costs we have already incurred. So I want to turn it over to Alita to talk a little bit more detail about what our process is for collecting the fees in order to reimburse the city for the costs we have already incurred and for taking a nuisance abatement action. So, Alita?
I'm Alita James, Planning Department. I supervise the nuisance abatement revocation section. Currently have 2 city planners, planning associates that work for me. In a nutshell, just so I won't go over the same things that Alan said, basically we get our referrals from the Citywide Nuisance Abatement Program, CNAP. And the director will, or the staff will, upon the director's instructions, initiate an action to start the revocation action. The staff will research, provide research and documentation along with a staff report. We move that forward to a public hearing. The zoning administrator will hold the hearing, in which case a letter of determination is issued after the hearing. As a condition that's placed in the notice of determination, we usually require the applicant within 30 days after the decision is rendered to reimburse the city for any nuisance, for all these fees that were incurred to bring the project to the hearing. After which point, if the applicant has not paid and the account goes 45 days into delinquency, at that point, we will refer that case to the Office of Finance, assuming, in this case, with the new fees that are $21,025, the imposition of conditions. As long as those fees are in excess of $5,000, we refer to the Office of Finance at that point. And we also have some fees. I can talk about the plan approval process. We also will ask the applicant through conditions to come back maybe in 6 months, 12 months, or 18 months to check. We're going to check on them, make sure that their site is operating and they have abated the nuisance activities, in which case we're asking the applicant to once again pay filing fees, and in this case it's $27,603 for the plan approval process. And again, we're bringing the owners and the operators back into a public hearing setting.
I want to add to that, just so I saw some eyebrows raising about on the prices, the fee level. The revocation cases are very time consuming, and we put a lot of resources on it, and they require a ZA hearing, and as you know, ZAs are very senior staff. And the plan approvals are not just bring a plan into the planning department to get an approval. It actually is processed as a new case. It requires a new hearing, and we have to do another field investigation and make sure there's a staff report for the ZA, and the ZA will hear the case and hear all sides, neighbors, the owner-operators, and that results in a decision letter written by the ZA. So that is a very, very long process and very carefully done process. Before the fee was effective on the 26th of October, the city pretty much picked up, I would say, 99% of the cost. And our mission goal in doing the fee study was to do full cost recovery, so there's no burden on the general fund. And for the revocation cases, there was no subsidy or general fund contribution to that. So that's why the fee levels are sort of high. We just want council, just need council to understand how we got to the new fee level. It wasn't a number that we just picked out of the blue sky.
I know you can't do that. The point was, that the motion was that we didn't used to do this, so we just began doing this in October?
Yes, October 26th was the effective day of the ordinance.
That's good, because this was brought to me by a former chief zoning administrator.
Yes.
Who left the city service before that date. Second question I have is, to avoid just the problem, you might get into a process and the guy just goes closed and walks away after you've already done all this work, and then you can't recover anything. So do we notify them before we actually get to the point of filing that we're going to file this case against you, and by the way, you need to know that it may cost you $20,000, $25,000, $27,000 to just even restore your rights to run your business? Do we let them know that this potential exists?
Normally, no. They don't know up front what the fees are.
I would just bet that if you told them up front, 99% would say, I give up, what do you want me to do? Rather than going through all that work and then trying to recover the money. And so I would hope that we just tell them up front, here's the process we're about ready to go into, and by the way, it's going to cost you about $25,000. If you win, and if you lose, you're out of business. So either way, the guy loses. Let's not be safe. The guy or gal loses. So if I could have you do that, I think this would help resolve an awful lot of cases, probably. And I got a feeling that it'd actually be a very strong tool for us to start using more of in problematic cases, just to let them know where we're going on these things. People would give up early in the process and not fight, for the most part.
Councilman, I think due to the sensitivity of the investigation and working with the CNAP program, we will have to take this suggestion back to the people that we work with and see what they think, because I know that when we're doing investigation or field check, we probably don't want to, just unilaterally go out and talk about it. We want to make sure that we have the buy-in of all, including PD.
You have to build your case. But once you've built that case, you ought to go knock on the door and say, business owner or fraternity house or whatever the case may be, here's what we've got. Our process is tomorrow to file this case, in which case, here's your options. You lose or you lose. basically.
Yes, we'll definitely look into that.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then, and if that's the case, then I move we just note and file.
Let me just ask, on the, you know, we go through this, and I think the nuisance process just sometimes takes forever, but it appears that we can't actually get to the abatement or revocation process without the nuisance process. Or is there a way to get to revocation without the full-blown nuisance process?
Historically, Councilman, we have not actually gone in with a revocation action. We do give the business owner operator a chance to correct their activities and to become a good neighbor again. So we do that through the public hearing process, and we give them a chance, and those chances are what we call the plan approval process, and we'll reel them in maybe every 6 months to 12 months and check on them, make sure that they're meeting the conditions that were set forth to correct these nuisance activities.
Now, a while back, Ms. Perry had a motion to kind of compress the process. Is that?
Councilwoman did make a motion to that effect, and the council did adopt a new ordinance.
Has that shown any benefits with the compressed process?
It has shown some benefits, but that particular set of ordinance amendments was that it increased our authority, the city's authority to revoke a use. Specifically, it permitted the city to padlock the site if at the end of the revocation process we didn't gain any compliance. We also instituted authority to, in some cases, turn off water and power to a site if we didn't get compliance. I have to say it did not streamline the process.
So it gave you more authority as opposed to compressing it?
Correct.
Thank you. Jose?
No questions.
No. Thank you very much. We'll move and approve that motion.
No.
So we did note and file?
Note and file.
Note and file.
So they already done it.
All right.
Thank you.
Note and file number 12. Okay, we go back to what, 7?
Item 7, yes. Item 7 is the mayor, city office, CAO, CLA, and CDD reports relative to the 36th program year Housing and Community Development Consolidated Plan.
Good afternoon.
How you doing?
Good, thank you.
Short timer.
Meg Barclay with the CLA's office. Before you, on January 6th, the Housing Community Economic Development Committee requested the CLA and the CAO to review the mayor's proposed 2010-11 36th program year consolidated plan. On February 26th, our offices provided additional budget and policy recommendations for council consideration. As you know, the consolidated plan includes funding and policy recommendations for the expenditure of approximately $167 million for federal grants: the Community Development Block Grant, Home Investment Partnerships, Emergency Shelter Grant, and Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS. This year, total funding for these 4 grants is approximately 3.5% more than it was in the 35th program year. The CLA and CAO report addresses the following issues relative to consolidated plan funded programs. Our recommendations have the effect of reducing unrecovered related cost reimbursement to the general fund from $4.5 million in the 35th program year to $3.5 million in the 36th program year. Also, we'd recommend an equitable distribution of the administrative planning related cost deficit between CDD and LAHD. And we also recommend continuing the past practice of reducing the carryover deficit from the 34th year. It should also be noted that the mayor's proposed plan, in that plan, homeless funding included in the amount of approximately $2.6 million that had been shifted to the CRA has been restored to the CDBG budget. The funding adjustments recommended by the CLA and the CAO are largely confined to the CDBG budget and are intended to address reduction in general fund impact from unrecovered related costs, reduction of the carryover deficit, and ongoing funding for multiple phase programs. And the CAO has some more information about the related costs and the general fund impact of the plan.
Good afternoon, Trina Unziker, Office of the CAO. There is a general fund impact, and this is because not all related costs for staff are funded through the con plan. As amended, the general fund participation would be approximately $4.5 million. This is the same level of general fund participation as last year in the con plan. We are optimistic that the city will actually achieve decreasing general fund participation, in part because of the general trend among CDBG-funded departments. And that is an increase of the amount of CDBG funds reimbursing the general fund. There is a chart in the CLA-CAO report on page 19, and it shows that while the resources available to the con plan have generally decreased over the last 4 years, the amount of general fund reimbursement has gone up over $3 million. To further mitigate fiscal impact, we've included some recommendations that we hope will allow for even more general fund reimbursement. First, we're asking CDBG departments that aren't already doing so to submit billing and reimbursement documentation to CDD on a monthly basis. Second, we're asking all CDBG-funded departments to report back prior to the end of the program year with three pieces of information that we think will help identify more ways to collect general fund reimbursements. One is an assessment of the extent that departments can provide program delivery within their budgeted resources. A second is cost adjustments that would be needed to achieve full cost recovery with budgeted CDBG sources. And three is additional resources that can be identified to offset related cost shortfalls to achieve full cost recovery. This information is intended to help the council make an informed decision regarding the general fund impact of the con plan. And with that, we're ready to respond to any questions you might have regarding the plan.
Let me just say, one of the things that we've hit on for the last several years on this plan, and we're pleased to get it earlier this year than in the past so that we can have an idea what the impact on the general fund is, because as it gets later, it's often we lose track. But the two things, and I don't know whether it fits perfectly into your page 20, C, where it talks about policy considerations, and you ask for those 3 bits of information by March 15th. The thing that I think is important for us is that from everything we can see is that this plan, before HCD did their report, was about $3.5 million impact on the general fund.
That's correct.
And it could go to 4.5.
That's correct.
All right, and then there's some information that all of the indirect costs, particularly in the area of housing, has not been accounted for.
No, they're not achieving full related cost recovery with the amendment.
What I'd like to do is, in part of that policy consideration and going consistently with what this committee has done, and also taking into account exactly where we are as a city in our budget, that part of that March 15th report should be a requirement that they tell us, number one, what is the impact on this year's or the 36-year plan by staying within the cap as relates to the planning and administrative costs. So the real key factor is to take general fund money completely out of the equation if they stay within the cap on the administrative and the planning. The second part of it, that they are asked to tell us the impact of addressing particularly the housing area if the city retrieves all of its related and indirect costs. So those are two things I think as a policy issue we need to know. Otherwise, I can tell you now there's not $4.5 million in the general fund that can be absorbed into making this plan work. And so we need to know that. And I think the other little tricky issue on this is that we have to be sensitive to, although everyone's trying to move positions off the general fund into special funds and to grant funds, we have to be sensitive to block grant money that positions get moved into that cost the general fund even more money. So we need to look for the CAO whether those block grant funds are the type of positions that need to have some hold on them, because having that lingering dollar value to the general fund is working at counterproductive of what we're doing as a general fund. But those are the two parts of that policy consideration that we need to make sure And again, we probably will, in between now and the 37th year, create a financial policy that talks about, under these circumstances, that our general fund should not be viewed as a resource for block grants, and that we should make sure that when we're moving forward, we basically create the block grant program within the confines of the federal guidelines, and not with the thought that we can rely on the general fund supplement. So those are two things I'd like to add to that March 15th report. And again, it would require a lot of assessment to determine what doesn't happen versus what is being proposed.
And the intent of requesting that report by March 15th was so that in the event that that information did cause the council to want to make those changes to achieve full cost recovery in the 36th year, you could do that before the 36th year begins on April 1st.
That's exactly what we want to get. And let me just add one thing I've never been clear on. We talk about administrative costs and planning costs, and we have a guideline of a percentage for the block grant money. Would it be reasonable to assess that in dealing with the dollar value above the cap, are those positions that are primarily outside of CDD? Is that why they're administrative solely and not operational, to where you can get a better assessment? Because I know you're moving people out in the field to make them fit more within the operations.
To some degree, that helps, but I think the other factor here is that we're taking on staff that is coming off the general fund onto grant-funded projects, and they will have to perform those duties and responsibilities that are eligible for block grant funds.
See, I think that's why we have to have that figure. And then I think the other issue for that report on the 15th is address the area of the impact as far as the general fund budget as it relates to the filling of these positions. Because again, if we're laying people off and we're going through that on general fund, and then we're creating a larger deficit,
and then just funding them on the other
funding
side.
them over there, because what I think everybody perceived is the movement of positions in the special funds would have no impact on the general fund. The movement of people into grant funds were grants that would not have an impact on the general fund. But if you're moving them and you're costing yourself money later, I don't believe that was what the intent was. So if we can get those kinds of figures and assessment, and also one of the things we've never gotten a clear picture on are how many positions are funded by block grant outside of CDD, and where might they be?
Mr. Chairman, as you know, over the last several years, we have shrunk our staff and made a number of other moves in order to get all of our staff fully funded under block grant. And we actually achieved that this year until this crisis occurred. So we are now actually doing what you just suggested, going back and looking at how is that going to impact our current situation, and how many staff off the general fund can we actually afford before it spills over to the general fund. And I believe that's the analysis that you're asking for us to do. And in fact, this year, prior to our crisis that we encountered, we had actually proposed a budget of 272 people in which everybody was fully funded with grant funds.
Because I think one of the things that was interesting to me is that you actually, you worked during the year and removed people off the general fund during the fiscal year. It was much better than what the starting of the year was. And then for this year, you're $1 million under what you started last year. So our expectation is we work through that. But then HCD did their committee report and added $1 million. Approximately what their changes added about $1 million to the issue of the planning and administrative costs. So it's about $4.5 million, not even getting into the funds for the overhead or indirect costs on the housing side. So we're going in the opposite direction. So we need those things, so by March 15th, we could decide what does it take to get us more and more off the general fund, and really the goal is not to be on the general fund. Jose? Nope. So those are things, and again, we're not going to go through each one of these items, but I think the policy issue is what we're most concerned with. And the reason that we asked for grants to come to Budget and Finance is specifically for that purpose, so that we were not funding out of the general fund items that we had no money for, or that we were getting a small amount of grant funds and spending a lot of general fund money. But the number one issue for this committee is that policy issue and how that eventually evolves, where we can hopefully one day have a block grant that comes through, we look at it and we stay within the confines of that cap, just as we're now within the public service cap. And we took us years to get to that point, but we're now there. Now the issue is, how do we get to the cap on the planning and administrative side? Okay. So if we can add that as we'll move, basically, and you should, everybody, you got the copy of HCED made some corrections. We'll move and support the HCED report and its amendments, and the CAO-CLA report, I guess. We're adopting that with the HCED amendments, and then the Budget and Finance amendments to those two reports. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. So any other items?
That's it.
Okay.
Done.
No other items, no cards, and we're adjourned.
Very good.
We are adjourned.
Yeah.